All right. Hello, friends. How are you doing on this lovely Friday?
Never better.
Never better. Never better. How's the weather out in BC?
Like it always is. Great.
It's great here too. We had like such good weather here in Calgary over the past few days, but now it's like going to full -20 because the weather can sense what's happening with U.S.-Canada relations, and it's just like responding accordingly.
We might get snow.
Yeah.
We might get snow, which in Vancouver means the apocalypse, right?
Yeah,
So you guys
down.
are shutting down. Like, never mind economic shutdown. You guys are just not going to be like moving at all.
Hide under your bed. Hide under your bed.
No municipalities allocate any funding to snow removal. It's just not.
We're diving right in. We're diving right in.
It's not a thing we do in BC in lower mainland. And then what tends to happen is we have like one snowstorm, 2 snowstorms a year, and there's all this media attention on like why are the streets icy? Like why are the cars sliding? And then this comes to light, and then everyone forgets about it because it snows twice, and then rinse repeat.
Yeah. Who knows if that'll like make it ahead of. So it's so funny. We were in our internally this morning. It was so funny. You guys saw all those news items of like tariffs on March 1st. Just kidding, actually February 1st. So it's actually really timely that we're having this discussion because Allie and I were talking and we were like, hopefully the things that we're talking about today are still accurate on Monday. But I think they are, because we're going to talk today about broad themes when it comes to Canada-US relations, and then particularly as it relates to BC, because you guys have an amazing practice at Sedgwick. You're working with tons of different clients in BC and across Canada. And that's really why we wanted to have this discussion today, because I think so many people see, and so many people in our Pocket Lobbyist community see all of the news, and then it's like, okay, yeah, but what? And I know you guys are in that space where you're advising clients in that way. And so I thought it'd be great to get together to have a discussion like this. So thanks for being here. It's fantastic.
Well, it's an honor. Hey, you're a good friend.
An honor. Oh my gosh.
Honor of a life.
Clip that. I'm going to clip that. Byng Giraud says honor.
Yeah, I think it's a really timely discussion. I mean, BC in particular is pretty unique, as you know, and in a lot of ways, I think everyone in Canada thinks BC is unique for maybe some ways we don't like to come across as unique. But, you know, one of the advantages we do have as it pertains to tariffs is the fact that we do have pretty diversified export economy here in BC. And that's just because of the simple fact that we are close to Tidewater. We can move products more easily to places outside of the US, but we are still really heavily reliant on the US, just like the rest of Canada.
Yeah, I mean, we've been either accidental or clever, and this is nonpartisan, whether it's Liberals or New Democrats or whomever was in power, is the diversification, the Asia focus has always been important in British Columbia. And so, I think the current percentage is 46% or 48% of British Columbia exports go elsewhere besides the United States. And that's the only province in Canada that's close. And I think there have been times where it was more than 50%, really depending on the mix of exports. So we are a little more lucky than the rest, but we it's a Canadian economy, not just a British Columbia economy. So we feel the pain of the rest of the country. But some of the lessons we have learned over the years to diversify are probably some lessons that the rest of the country could learn too.
Yeah, so maybe I think that's actually a really great place to start, because we see stuff that's happening particularly in BC and Canada, but let's maybe just start the discussion, Byng or Allie, whomever wants to go first, of what you guys think the main risks and opportunities are, broadly speaking, in British Columbia. So that can be economically, that can be from like a border security perspective, from a diversification perspective. Let's start the conversation there. So whoever wants to go first.
Allie
is prepped for this webinar. Like I if you need to know something about what's happening in BC, Allie knows the exact statistic for it.
I went down way too many statistic rabbit holes though over the last 48 hours. So I feel like I'm almost on information overload. I mean, I guess very high level, what are the risks and opportunities? Byng will talk more about the opportunities. I'll leave him to do that because he's quite clever in strategizing opportunities for BC. As far as the risks go, I mean, we have a lot of issues within BC, and I think that's almost our biggest risk. So I think that, as obviously Premier Eby, the Premier of BC's province, has come out and said, we could lose up to $69 billion up until 2028. This is bad. We're going to rely on the federal government to come in and secure the borders. We're not going to do anything about that. There's a lot of, risk and kind of, not being as, I would say, proactive potentially as other provinces, because we haven't heard too much from the federal government on what their total plan is for tariffs yet. I would also say, though, on the internal side, our risk is that right now in BC, we've done a great job of getting some big projects up and running. We had Site C happen, thank God for TMX, because TMX has helped diversify both Western Canada and Canada's market writ large. We also have LNG Canada coming on board. So we have these big projects. Our biggest risk is that we have nothing in the pipeline. So we have no projects in BC in the pipeline right now. Cedar LNG, probably a couple years away from construction. We have Silicim's LNG. Right now we have 16 mines in the province of British Columbia waiting for approval. So when you think about our biggest risk, it's really on the regulatory and permitting side. We keep talking about it. It's all we've talked about for my entire career. We have 16 mines that we could get open with critical minerals, some of which we could actually supply to U.S. defense. Yeah. Right. That's something they're looking for. And then, that's not even counting the notice of work permits that we have in the system. So, there's tons of notice of work permits that would help inject money into the economy. So I think when you think of risk, it's like in BC in particular, I think we kind of need to figure out what's going on in our own province and how to maximize that.
Yeah, and the risk, just before Byng goes on opportunities, you hit on a really interesting point, and we can maybe touch on it during this discussion. Yeah, it's a Trump and American risk in terms of that policy, but it's also like a look in the mirror, domestic, provincial, regional, national risk too that we've imposed. So Byng, I don't know if you want to riff off that or go into opportunities.
What's our biggest risk is that we're stupid. And the second biggest risk is we continue to be stupid.
Yeah, Byng is bringing the joy on Friday. Like, hey, I hate to break it to you guys, but like, we're pretty stupid. So like, I don't know if I can give you any hope here.
Well, so
thanks for summarizing my point.
We have what the whole world wants. Yeah, the whole world wants our stuff, right? Trees, fish, rocks, oil, gas, like whatever. The whole world wants our stuff, and we have been massively stupid about letting them buy it, right? The Germans and the Greeks came here asking for our natural gas. Oh no, sorry, we don't have a business case for that. We've got a war in Ukraine and they're struggling with energy security. And no, sorry, we're busy with whatever other weird agenda we have in this country. No, we can continue to be stupid. We have what the world wants. And sure, the massive risk is the Americans are going to dump this on us, but we have what the whole that's one country. It's a big country, yeah, admittedly, and it's a big part of the world economy, admittedly. But we have what the whole world wants. They have come and asked us for it, and we can't get out of our own way. So, it's productivity, it's getting to tidewater, it's exports. What's our biggest risk? We could just continue to be stupid. I liken this to we're like a teenager on the couch at our parents' house, and our dad finally kicked us off the couch. Get a job. Get to work, right? Trump might be, put the sort of the Trump personality aside. The reality is we have not been developing our resources. We've not been trading with the world the way we should be. We have not carried our weight in terms of national defense. We have, partially because we haven't had the money, which again, we could export more stuff and have more money. But get off the couch. Stop being stupid. Get off
the couch. Get your ass up and work, to quote the famous Kim Kardashian.
And very nice. Love a Kim K quote on a Friday. And on Byng's point, we really haven't leveraged what we have. And one of the biggest things that we have in BC is ports, right?
Yes.
We've got ports. We've got one in Prince Rupert. We've got one in Vancouver. We've got port in Victoria. We have ports. We could build more ports. Squamish, for example, has a port, very, very underutilized port.
With a railway,
by the way, that goes right, bring it overseas. So we have these assets, and for whatever reason, we have not capitalized on them, and they haven't. I was saying to you both the other day, obviously this is a big threat. It's a threat to our company. It's a threat to all of our clients. It's a threat to Canada, to BC. I am somewhat happy that this is happening. It is the most time I have ever seen our federal government and our provincial government in the last decade say the words natural resources.
Mhm.
It is like this
Mhm.
dirty, dirty word across Canada, across BC. Meanwhile, it's driving our entire economy. The reason that financial services is like our biggest part of our economy is because all they're doing is managing mines, managing oil and gas, managing forestry.
The TSX is all mine stock. The biggest export of British Columbia by volume and by dollar figure is coal, followed by natural gas. But we're like the Undertaker's son, right? We don't want to. We have the nicest car in the parking lot at the high school, but we don't want to tell anybody what our dad does for a living, right?
Yeah.
We are like, I don't understand this embarrassment of what generates the wealth, and so yes, finally we have been challenged that maybe we need to stand on our own 2 feet, and so it's, the Chinese saying every risk is an opportunity. We have an opportunity here. We have a massive opportunity here. And my fear is governments are going to fall into the two sort of tropes, right? The Canadian anti-American trope, like, oh, if they do something to us, we're going to be mean back to them. They're the closest in the world to being a self-contained economy. They have the consumers, they have the resources. They can kind of, like, if the rest of the world didn't trade with the United States, they would do better than any of the rest of us if that was applied to us. So they have the biggest self-contained economy. So this has always been a problem, a risk. Like, why doesn't Trump have to go to Congress about these tariffs? Because there are 4 or 5 pieces of legislation that Congress has passed over the years that allows the president to act unilaterally in tariffs. So despite their balance of power and their the Congress and the courts and the presidency, in this space, the president can act unilaterally. Why wouldn't a Canadian government, who is so reliant on the Americans as our customer, understand that? Just like Trump happened to be the guy who does it, any president could have done this to us. And we should have had that on our risk matrix since Confederation. Right?
Have we ever done a risk matrix?
Yeah, I'm incredulous that our one strategy is, let's be mad at the Americans and let's throw up a bunch more tariffs. They don't give a crap. We can tariff them to hell. They don't care.
And Byng, Kate, you both you and Allie are touching on something that's so important as well. So one of the things, like, yes, let's look at the economy. Let's look at like the sort of like meat and potatoes public policy issues that have to do with, top line measures of making wealth. So like, yeah, let's work on the infrastructure. Let's do all of these things. But one of the things, and it speaks to your point about risk, is the idea of not seeing some of these things coming, which I think has a very significant social element to it as well. And we're not going to get into talking about social issues, but one of the things that I have found very interesting, and we were talking about it earlier this week, is just like the intersection of like human nature and sociology with economics when it comes to this. Because it's like, yeah, we have been able to be the kid with the expensive car at school, not like being able to hold sort of like luxury beliefs about these industries that are actually paying our bills, because the money was always flowing and there was no real threat to that. So there's like that aspect of it. And I think there's also the aspect of, we elect governments to make public policy. There's several different theories on this. To serve the people. We're not in a direct democracy. Of course, government has autonomy, but government is as well supposed to be leaders when it comes to like where society is going, and is supposed to be able to respond and identify what it is that society wants and create public policy accordingly, because half of the population of Canada doesn't understand the like nuances of how policy is made. But I think it is the job of elected officials to hear what people are saying. Affordability is a challenge. Productivity is a challenge. My kids are never going to be able to buy a house. Economic opportunities aren't there, and to make policy that responds accordingly. And I just think it's really interesting how this almost like this certainty that people had that Trump wouldn't get elected again, this wouldn't happen. This isn't really where people are at. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that as it relates to like Canada and where things are going, but I just had a thought about that.
It does speak to a sort of a malaise, an atrophy, I suppose, of our political decision makers. Like we see it with the government's over-reliance on, say, McKinsey, for example. There are no, where are the ideas coming from? They have to hire consultants to generate ideas. Our civil service used to be the place where ideas were generated. You know,
Yes.
the brightest and the best would go to Ottawa or you know, to Edmonton or Victoria, wherever they would go, and they would be part of the Great Canadian Project. And now we've got like 10 times as many people in those jobs. Can't even get a passport on time. I guess maybe it's shortened the timeline now, but like it's become ridiculous. The contract of what peace, order, and good government per BNA, peace order, the contract with Canadians has been, I wouldn't say it's broken, but it's been ignored. The contract is to anticipate and to think of these things. And again, the notion that the president has always had these powers and we haven't thought that this could happen. The political tides in the United States, never mind Trump, we're moving in this direction. Anti-globalism, you know, like all the factory jobs are in China, middle-class America feeling the hurt. Like, didn't anybody see this coming? Like, is that why you had to hire McKinsey? Because you couldn't think of that? It is ridiculous. And Melissa, you know, sorry I rant here, but it's like, yeah.
No, we like the rants. This is like, we are here for the rants.
Friday rant
that contractual obligation of the civil service and the political leadership of this country, regardless left, right, middle, is broken because they don't know what they do for us anymore.
But we all know why that is. I mean, I'll say it because I like being a little controversial every day. We don't have a strategy, right? I mean, I think that Canadian first attitude is lacking because we don't have a plan. And I think we can all agree. I mean, we obviously are in the small business arena, but small business, big business, medium-sized business, you need money to pay for things, right? We can all agree to that. I need money to pay for a house. I need money to pay the groceries. We haven't really strategized around how we're going to pay for everything in Canada. And I think, you know, when we have seen governments that have come in and understood this and like understood the assignment of like, okay, we have all these social issues, we have all these cultural issues, we have other issues that we need to figure out, but we do actually have to have a strategy for our economy, because if we don't have that, then all the other things can't be solved.
This speaks to another risk that's not even being like, it's not even part of the dialogue. And again, left, right, and indifferent, because Ford or EV or Trudeau or whoever's running Ottawa these days, they only have one type of hammer and they think every problem's a nail. Oh, we're going to launch another COVID style binge of spending. Well, guys, you spent $80 billion before COVID, so we were already broke. Then we had COVID and you're even broker. And now our solution to this is let's spend more. Well, okay, maybe that'll take the pressure off us in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But
fairy money,
the broader risk to our country of this sort of flagrant spending to my children, to their children, this bankruptcy, like this is your only idea. This is your only idea. We're gonna let's have another CERB, right? Another CERB program. Like this is your only idea.
And let's unpack why that is problematic though, Byng, because I think that I do feel like we are becoming a little bit more cognizant now in society of like different viewpoints and not sort of like, I think there's an opportunity for more nuance now, which to Allie's point, like sometimes things have to get bad for them to get better. I think the difference between the political culture in America and the political culture in Canada, I think does have a lot to do with attitudes towards business. And I think that in Canada, when somebody may hear the three of us lamenting over the idea of billions more dollars in stimulus being put into the economy and think, oh, wow, these guys don't care about people who are going to suffer because of tariffs. But I think that's we need to make a point of emphasizing that that's not true. The problem, I think, with that strategy is that it is a Band-Aid over a deeper problem. And if we do not actually unpack what the deeper problem is, half of our GDP growth in this country is attributed to housing prices increasing and not actually any productive GDP growth of new industries. We have some of the highest household debt levels that we're seeing across Canada.
700,000 British Columbians don't have a doctor. 700,000,
exactly.
Like that's
exactly
20%. That is
yes.
This is supposed to be a modern Western society.
Yes.
Oh my God, right?
Yes.
And our
1.2 million people on wait lists for specialists. Like,
our solution to that is, oh, well, we're just going to build more hospitals and get more doctors. By the way, very pro build more hospitals, get more doctors. Where's the money coming for it? How are we going to pay for it? Right. And I feel like, Melissa, to your point, we need creative solutions. I mean, Byng the other day was talking about how, okay, what are we doing to double down on other economies? Who are other, in BC, for example, we're lucky. We have almost 46% of our, GDP goes out to other countries outside of the US. What are we doing to entice China? What are we?
I would put on my nicest suit and my, my prettiest smile, and I would be trade missioning myself to death right now, because the best revenge is to live well. The Americans, they could ignore us, right? We could put the tariffs on, and there will be some individual areas, maybe an individual congressman will be mad and he'll go lobby the president. This is a president who loves to double down, right? When he gets threatened, you think he's going to back off? Maybe he'll just jack him up 10% more. Right? I mean, this is all possible. He has the authority under their laws. We have friends in Japan. We have friends in Europe. Something that just popped up on my Facebook, this idea of this New Zealand, Britain, free movement of people. Like, you don't need a passport. You can just go to those four nations. We all have similar cultures, and we all kind of, I think we all get along. Simple, like, what do you, things like that could generate interest. Show the Americans that we're not that. We can live well elsewhere. We have other things we can do, and would allow a movement of capital and people that's probably never been seen before. Like, there's just little things like that. Like, we need to be innovative. We need to think of our friends. We have lots of partners. We just let's go. Like, why isn't the Prime Minister in Bonn? Why isn't the Prime Minister in Tokyo? Like, yeah, send down your negotiators to Washington. You've got to fight the fight, sure, but no good strategy is based on not a single good strategy is based on assuming your opponent will fail.
Yeah.
If your whole strategy is like, I'm just going to wait for those guys to fail, you have no strategy. You need your own strategy. What are we going to do as Canadians that's going to be different? We're going to build our relationships with other countries who actually want our products. We are going to expand our access to Tidewater. We are going to be the most attractive place in the world.
Yeah, like, look at this. So I'll pull up some slides because we were talking about some of the stats. So 54% of the province's total merchandise exports are going to the United States. That's $30.4 billion. It's going to these states primarily. And then, to your point, there's opportunities with these other trading partners that we can grow. Like, it's not like those relationships aren't there and that they aren't going to increase. And to your point on the growing trading partners as well, I'll take these slides down in a second here, but I just wanted to put a visual representation to some of what you're saying. Like, this is, and then this is an opportunity that we have. And so if we're not going to wait, like, again, if we're not going to wait for the Prime Minister to sort out whatever is going on federally, if we're not going to wait for that leadership to happen there, and we're going to look to see it from the provincial level, and this is the last slide I'll just sort of show, which shows our British Columbia's energy exports here. So, I mean, extrapolate what you will on where best those exports can go. But what are we, like, two-part question. If I'm an industry in British Columbia, and we can get into some of the specifics about which industries are sort of most at risk and least at risk. I mean, if you looked at that previous chart, energy probably most at risk if those tariffs come in. What am I encouraging the provincial government to think about? And then what am I doing as a business owner in my own activities, in my own sort of diplomacy, to try to set the stage for a better path forward? We're having to deal with this. Let's figure out a way to actually meet this risk and plan for the future. Like, what am I thinking about?
Well, we kind of touched on it. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Byng.
I'm gonna accelerate the permitting of the second train of LNG Canada, the biggest private sector investment in Canada ever. I'm gonna accelerate the permitting of the second train like yesterday.
Yeah,
that gas goes overseas.
Going to do the same thing with Cedar LNG. How can we help get that up and going? There's 16 mines ready to be built. Like, let's get them built. By the way, critical minerals, that's a huge portion of the exports that are going to
Turn
Japan, South Korea.
All your civil servants who are in those dirt ministries, as we call them, to this purpose.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
I'm going to approve those 17 mines. I'm going to approve those three
Yes.
LNG projects, and I'm going to turn all my ammunition, all the brain power that exists or doesn't exist, to those things alone. Not all sorts of, like, let's have a critical mineral strategy. You know what the critical mineral strategy is? Open a mine.
Get mines built. Well, and look at where you're spending your time. I mean, as a business person, we do this, right? We think about what are our things that we're looking to accomplish. Why are you going down to California and talking about the film industry? Like, why are you not spending more time getting briefed up on what's happening in the resource sector, right? Like, these are the things that are supporting those other industries. So how are you dedicating your time to that? And like really taking a hard look at that.
Years ago, it was sort of one of my rants was, and I have many, is like, we decided we want to get the Olympics in BC, right? So 2010 Olympics. And it was like, goal, government, work with First Nations. Everybody was driving to that. So we got it. Like, why can't you take that same approach that, like, I'm going to permit in the next 48 months, 24 months, whatever, 24, let's say 20. I'm going to permit and approve 15 mines. I'm going to let LNG Canada begin its second train. There's lots of hair on these things, and there's environmental considerations, and I don't want to dispense with things, but the reality is it can be moved faster with the right attention and right approach, without jeopardizing the rigor we need for those projects. So, for example, during the COVID crisis and of course the Ukrainian war, the Germans permitted an import LNG facility, and the Germans do not have lax environmental laws. They permitted, approved, and built an import facility, an LNG import facility, in 6 months.
And to Byng's point on that, Melissa, I really think part of this does come down to the bureaucracy. We work with a ton of really good folks at the BC government. I don't want to, completely discount that. I will say, however, there needs to be incentives put in place, right? People need to be incentivized. The province needs to be incentivized. That's one of the levers the federal government could use. They could incentivize the provinces. The federal government has really supported BC. They've supported them, basically backed their entire childcare plan here in British Columbia. They've helped with tons of infrastructure projects. Like, you can incentivize the provincial government to build these things. That's a role a Canadian government can play. And I really think that would help spur these types of new exports. I also think one thing, Byng and Melissa, that we have to do is we have to get our ports expanded. I mean, if we're really serious about increasing trade outside of the US, our ports need to be, expanded, but the security at those ports, to what, Trump has been harping on, also needs to be modernized. We just don't have modern security at any of our ports. So, while we want to increase exports and imports, we also have to make sure that we're securing our ports properly.
I have another crazy idea too.
Let's hear it. I have so many things. Like, I have like a list right here that's just like funny things that Byng has said so far.
So, crazy idea.
One-liners.
So back in the late 90s, I think it was 99, New Zealand, with a particular persuasion of government, essentially said, we're going to get rid of all our import duties and tariffs. We're just going to go free market. And their economy actually flourished because of it. They have a very anti-tariff policy in New Zealand. They have a very free market approach. They still have some things. But what if the Premier of British Columbia said, you know what, interprovincial trade barriers, I'm going to get rid of all mine unilaterally. Like, I can't get you other guys organized. Like, I'm not going to hurt the cats. I'm just going to get rid of mine unilaterally. The first thing that would do is Premier Danielle Smith in the next province, who thinks of herself as a free trader, would say, geez, why didn't I think of that? So we'd have 2 provinces pretty fast, and Mo would probably come along. We'd have 3 provinces really fast. Like, they say that the impact of internal trade barriers is equal to approximately 21% tariffs as well. So, instead of like, oh, we got to have a premier's conference, we got to wring our hands and call each other names, and you got to give me this and I got to give you that. Nah, I'm just going to unilaterally say, we're not going to have any trade barriers in BC anymore. We're done with that. We challenge the rest of you guys to get your act together too.
Well, and I think like this is easy, right? It should be easy, but we let egos, we let policy get in the way of this.
When there'll be some lobbyist in there, and I have lots of friends who are lobbyists, there'll be some lobbyist in there whining about why their industry needs to be protected. Well, you know what? Those days are done, right? This is like, let's stop being parochial and narrow and self-interested. If this is a national challenge, let's think like nation builders.
Well, and it's building on some of what Polyev is saying in the media as well, which I think is super interesting. Like, obviously, my company is called Pocket Lobbyist, tongue in cheek a little bit. I think lobbyists are fine, and I think advocating for interests
You're fine.
are more. I'm one of the good ones. Like, let's just be real here. But this idea of, you know, people when that National Post op-ed that I think it was National Post that he wrote that was basically like fire your lobbyist. It really was like, people are like, oh, hate lobbyists. I don't think that's true at all. I think that it's whether you're lobbying internally as an organization, whether you're hiring an organization, or whether you're getting strategic advice on what to do, I think the push on that is stop rent-seeking behavior and only suggesting things that are going to be good for you, and have a bigger vision of how this is going to benefit Canadians, right? And I strongly believe in that.
Totally.
Yes.
Rent-seeking behavior. So
yes,
don't get rid of your lobbyists, because you still got to, you got to lobby to get rid of the regulations. That's the big thing you should be spending your lobbyist money on. But yeah, this rent-seeking behavior, like I can't believe how much effort is now spent in the whole GR world, because we're involved in that ecosystem as well, on getting access to a government grant or a government program. I don't remember that as I worked in politics when I was quite young. I don't remember that was the first thing you did. Like, oh, what program can I get some cash from? Like, what?
And the bigger we talk about, sorry, Allie, I'll jump to you. We talk about this in our GR 101 cohort of like, the bigger government gets, the more demand is needed for like lobbying behavior to navigate those. So this is going back to our point that we were saying before. We may think that bigger government, bigger spending is good for more people, but it's actually just incentivizing the kind of behavior to like get the people who can really understand these complexities to like game the system in their favor. Sorry, Allie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on to that point as well, Melissa, and to Byng. We are not, as a country, like thinking about government as a business at all. And it really, at this point, there's probably more money being spent on lobbyists lobbying government for programs, like Byng said, than there is actually working with clients, working with associations, working with these groups to be more bold, right? We see this trend of associations and groups, they're so nervous about how government thinks of them because there are all of these programs in place and money they can tap into, that they're no longer actually getting out there and saying, hey, by the way, like our industry is dying and you need to stop what you're doing. And here's what you need to do and change. And we've seen some, flutterings of it in the last couple of years, but for the most extent, it's like when you listen to someone from an association or you listen to someone from a industry association speak, it's like you're listening to government. And that's not the way it used to be. And there's no healthy tension happening right now. So instead, companies, have to go out, hire lobbyists go into government, try and get some policy changes done. It's very interesting. It's a trend that needs to be, I think, shifted. And I think Polyev is kind of pushing for that.
And you give up your power as well when you are not like, it goes back to what Byng was saying, the best revenge is just being like good at what you're doing. And I often encourage clients and people that we work with to not worry about how they're seen with government if they're actually creating jobs, spending money wisely, doing the right policy-driven, data-driven thing. And I think that we now, like, just to build off of the rent-seeking behavior point, it's like, I was reading something a couple of years ago, I'll try and find it, but I'm no longer trying to create a business based on what I think is the best business idea. I'm trying to change the business idea that I think would be revolutionary and innovative. I'm not doing this, but people are doing this to fit whatever grant, which is even worse because it's like, no, go do the thing that's going to create jobs, create wealth, help people, and then think about don't think about the funding, think about the framework and the regulation, as Byng said and Allie said, and the policies that need to be in place for you to thrive in a way where your success can be the success of all the people that you deal with.
And we take that all the way back to this, the impetus of this discussion is the Trump thing. Like, we are spending an inordinate amount of effort to try and change the public policy decision in the United States instead of, living well. Instead of what can I do better than anybody else in the world? What does the world want that I have? What is my business model? How do I make Canada the go-to place for so many things. And it may be a longer term play than having to deal with tariffs that are tomorrow. And so I understand governments need to deal with what's in front of them. But again, back to the idea of civil servants creating policy or governments creating policy, we need to think about the longer game. And this is why I see this, as much as it may hurt us as a company, because we mostly work for natural resource projects. I see this as an opportunity for us to get off the couch and rethink the kind of country we want to be, and the country that the world wants us to be. The world wants us to be a place where I can get natural resources that doesn't involve child exploitation or environmental degradation or all the awful things when I buy it from 95% of the rest of the world. I can get my oil and my gas and my gold and my copper and my trees from an ethical first world society, indigenous partners. We're not perfect, but we're doing our best, and we're probably doing it better than anybody else. Like, what's so wrong about that? Right?
We also need to put on our creative hat with the US. So we're spending all of our time talking about how we're going to, create some fairy money to give to everyone to rescue their businesses. What does the US really want? Like, how could we become a better partner? Well, I think there's two real things that Donald Trump wants. He wants energy security, right? He wants energy security, and he wants dominance over AI. He's nervous, I think, about AI, nervous about China's potential dominance.
DeepSeek? Is that the new one? DeepSeek? Is that the new?
Yeah, like how are we helping the US with that? I mean, we've had a Defense Production Act for decades, and it's only in this last year and a half that we've actually done anything about that. So how can Canada become a locked-in critical supplier of minerals for US defense? I mean, that would make us a better partner. This is something that Trump is asking for. He is concerned about defense, concerned about energy supply for defense. We've seen China recently, basically say, we're not giving you these 3 minerals that you need for your defense, by the way, like stopping all export of it. So I think Canada also needs to perhaps be a bit more creative in how we're marketing ourselves, even to the United States, instead of just saying, well, you guys need our oil. All of your facilities are made for our oil. True. Very important. But like, what else are we doing to market ourselves there?
You make such a great point, Allie. And I would love your perspective on this too, Byng. But like with this back and forth, we started off this chat talking about all the back and forth when it comes to tariffs, like February 1st, March 1st, sounds like it's February 1st. But people like it begs the question of like, what does Trump actually want of all of this, right? Like, so to Allie's point, we can do some of these other things, but like, is there like, what is the scenario within which Trump is like being like, okay, no tariffs, just kidding. Like, do we not at some level have to understand like these are coming, we're going to have to deal with them for a finite point of time, and let's stop pretending like the tariffs have anything to do with economics from Trump. Like, I'm not trying to be totally dismissive of that, but I think this has more to do with like tone than it does economics. Like, I don't know what you guys think. Exactly. So it's like, then let's respond pragmatically and not like, oh, like, let's not just respond to the thing that he's saying. Let's respond to the thing that he means by what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're dealing with a personality, and that's a whole another thing. But like I said, like, this is a guy who doubles down. Like, he could take 25 and make it 35 or 50, because their economy, there will be some individual congressmen and some individual senators who may rail against that because Canada is an important neutral trade partner. But I don't, if you look at his history and his decision making, I don't think that matters worth one whit. Our strategy is like this. It sounds like we're going to have some tariffs and we're going to do a trade war with the Americans, is a fundamental misunderstanding of him as an individual and a fundamental misunderstanding of how the American economy works. And again, they are a self-contained economy. There would be hardship and people would suffer, but it would be marginal compared to what's going to happen here. So that this is the primary strategy I'm hearing out of, again, across the political spectrum, from the Prime Minister as a liberal, from Ford as a conservative, and from Eby as a New Democrat. This is their primary strategy with a guy who, when he's been challenged in the past, simply doubles down. The logic of it like, yeah, let's figure out what he really wants and work on those things. But also, let's have a better strategy for how we're going to exist beyond this. I mean, Trump's there for 4 years. Let's be honest. Right? This is a 4-year, and 4 years can be really hard. But like, what is our strategy to get to beyond this? Is this just something we have to survive? Like, I caught a cold, and I just got to get well, and it'll go away. No, this is not a cold. This is something. This is an existential threat that any president could do at any time. And if Trump is successful, future presidents will look upon this as an effective strategy. Mm-hmm. So we better think about this better than let's just have some, let's just make some inconveniences for some senator in Wisconsin. Like, that ain't gonna fly.
Yeah,
it's not clever. It's not a clever strategy, and I cannot believe our entire civil service on the multiple levels of government, this is their main play. Now, I'm probably underestimating. There are other things going on, but I would make my living well revenge, as we've been saying. My trade missions, my bold, more vigorous Canadiana, like, we're great and we're fine and we're going to go do a deal with these guys and these guys and these guys. I would make that much more of the front face of what I'm doing than I think, which is sort of just cheap American. It's politics, right? They're playing on sort of Canada's instinctual anti-Americanism. It's like, oh, we're going to fight them. We're going to take them on tariffs. Yeah.
Pax Canadiana, but look at this data as well. This is what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, it's an economic question, but like, what is driving this curiosity?
This is Justin Trudeau's post-national state. You don't give a
like this is what I'm saying is that these issues are literally. These issues are economic and they are real, and businesses do have to, from a very tactical perspective, respond to what those are going to mean. Okay, I have tariffs. I'm going to have to, look at my supply chains. I'm going to have to look at my customers. I'm going to have to, encourage the government to open up those export markets. But like, what's driving, if it's not just the economic calculation that Trump is making, which different economists will tell you different things about the economic impacts of that. If it's not just that, then it has to be something more. So what about Trump and his export of ideas, like Byng talking about like Pax Canadiana kind of thing? What is Trump exporting that people in Canada are so drawn to? Like, what is
opportunity? Honestly, like we are, I mean, I'm in this category, right? We're both in this category, Melissa. Like, it is not easy. It is not in that category.
Wait, Byng, you bought your house for X and now it's worth 20X in Vancouver. So just stay out of this conversation.
Let's stay out of this conversation.
Yeah, you are not welcome.
It really is the opportunity. I mean, I think how hard it is to build a business in BC and in Canada. It is not easy. You look at the tax reliefs that small, medium businesses are given in the US. You look at the opportunity, not only like the domestic market opportunity in the US, just because the population size is so much bigger, but because of the investments that the government has made, even under the Biden administration, into technology, productivity, into your workers, like the ability to grow a business and scale a business in the United States, simply put, is easier, and you're incentivized. Whereas in Canada, it doesn't seem like our governments at any level in BC.
The government's been at war with small business.
They don't. Yeah, they don't. They're making, like, I honestly, on a weekly basis, will say once a week, think, should I just give this all up and work for the provincial or federal government? Because I could get a nice pension. I could probably make a decent living. I could clock out at like 4:30 every day and not work on the weekends. And they are making it an easier choice for Canadians to just work for the government or work for a government entity.
Which is cool, by the way. There's nothing wrong with working for the government. And I think government workers are amazing. I think government workers work really hard. But what you're saying, Allie, I think is like, we need a strong mix of
the other
different
stuff is too hard.
Exactly.
It gets so hard. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll have somebody else. Like, instead of being an entrepreneur, I'll just work for somebody else, right? And not to say just diminishes it. I don't mean that at all. And I'm not even just talking government. Like, there is a different level of responsibility to be an entrepreneur and build a business. Melissa, you know this.
Yeah.
I know this, right? There's a different level of responsibility, and sometimes it's hard. And you say, maybe I'll just rather take a paycheck, right? But it's Malthusian's. It's the hierarchy of needs, right? It's the hierarchy of needs, right? So these young people 34 is at the upper edge of this category. So for 10 years, they've been living under this government. And we said we weren't going to talk social, but I'm still going to do it because it's all part of this.
That's okay.
Is we've been told that this is a bad place and awful and we've ruined the world and we're genocidal maniacs or whatever it is. Our history is fraught with evil people. We've been told this, and we've been told we're a postmodern state. And so these young people, if you're 34, that's the top end of that category you just showed. So since 24 to 34, you've been living in this environment, and then you look across the board and you see that they're wealthy, they're doing better, they can afford their homes. You watch HGTV and guys renovating his house, and it's going to cost me. I'm buying this fixer upper for $200,000. I'm like, what? I'll take 6, right?
Yeah.
So we've created this thing. We've created of course, people are. You can't actualize the Canadian dream or the Canadian project if you're just trying to pay your rent. You can't. Yeah. Right? It's the hierarchy of needs. I just gotta feed myself. I gotta get to work, and I'm not getting ahead, and it hurts me, and that's why people emigrate, right? Because
you think
it's too hard.
You think about what you get excited about, like as a person, right? What do you get excited about?
Malthusian is Maslow. Sorry.
You get excited.
We know what you meant.
You get excited about like the future, and it's very difficult to be excited about the future, I feel like, in Canada in that age category these days. Before we start talking and you guys dive into your crazy Maslow's hierarchy, I will say a good friend of mine who has another podcast, Steve Soretsky, he tweeted like one of the best things I've read in a long time the other day. He said it's a good reminder that Canadian household would need an annual income of approximately $186,963. That's a little more than minimum wage.
Which is theoretically the top 1%.
Yeah. To afford a mortgage on a median priced home in this country, at which point the government thinks you're rich and taxes you into oblivion. That is where that age category is living right now. That is the line. I will carry that with me. And that's why that age category thinks, you know what, maybe we should become a 51st state.
And why that age category, if you look at some of the stats, I know Canada and the US are different, but like why the idea or the prospect of not being punished for doing well or for the prospect of a growing economy is so alluring to people, and why they may, on some of the things that are higher up on the pyramid here on the hierarchy, why other things that I don't want to hate on like DEI or any of the social things, but that is why in a binary choice, when you are voting for somebody, when you can only vote for one person, you can't like vote in, degrees. That is why if those lower levels are not accessible, why more extreme or more right wing or whatever you want to call, that is why those people are having success when they maybe didn't before. And so to bring it even just back to what is going on with Canada's response to tariffs and BC's response to tariffs, I don't think they've announced any sort of stimulus, but why are we going to fight fire? Sorry, I shouldn't say that because there's been fires going on, but why are we going to fight this enemy of inflation and rising cost of living with policy tools that are only going to exacerbate that, right? Like that's my frustration with the mentality on some of this.
Totally. So again, back to my simplistic that they must be hard. Like approve LNG Canada's Train 2 this year. Biggest private sector investment in Canada. What would that do to the GDP of British Columbia? I don't know. I haven't done the math, but I'm thinking that might be the smartest thing you could do. Versus putting a bunch of tariffs on widgets.
Yeah.
Right?
And taxes, right? I mean, because we don't have this base of new projects, because we are not generating wealth from resources, because there are 16 mines that are waiting to be built in the province, we can't lower taxes in British Columbia. And our taxes just keep on going up. So if you want that 18 to 34 category to be incentivized to stay, you do actually have to stop raising taxes and maybe even potentially cut them at some point. I'm all about paying taxes. I am all about supporting other people and supporting healthcare and supporting education and school. But, when you make it so hard and you just keep,
But when you say I'm all about those things, I mean, this is what we're trying to defend. Like, people might watch this and go, "Oh, you guys are just so, soft to the Americans." We are saying this because we are vigorously pro-Canadian. Yes. I do not want to be an American. Like, I was at the investiture, the Lieutenant Governor in Victoria, and we sang "God Save the King." Now, you know,
Yes.
these things have brought us a level of stability and envy of the world. So I want to vigorously defend these things. And half-assed, reactionary, you know, tariff policy, you know, without clever thinking is you know, betrays the robust nature of this country. Like we can be all the things that, you know, it was said the last century was supposed to belong to us. This century could belong to us if we embraced our strengths and stopped denigrating ourselves and said, you know what? My dad is the Undertaker, and I'm damn proud that he's the Undertaker. That's why I have the nicest car in the high school parking lot. So I am proud that the primary exports of this province are natural resources that are pulled out of the ground by honest, tax-paying Canadians who believe in our system, and there is dignity in the work they do. And I'm sick and frickin' tired of governments in this country. Those people create the wealth that I benefit from. I am so tired of this. Like, you know, we can't allow 60 more mines. When was the last time anybody even saw a mine? There's only 17 in the province, and they're big when you're standing next to them, but you don't know where they are unless you're standing right next to it. It's a big place. And so like this is robust Canadianism. This is not acquiescent to an American.
And Byng, where does that Pax Canadiana, robust Canadianism fall in this hierarchy? This proves our point. It's not in the first 2 or 3 levels. And that is why, if we don't take care of those levels, that we are going to have, I think, more people being willing to sacrifice things that are really actually important about Canada to access those.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Totally. And this is where we're all sort of vigorously agreeing, right? Is like, this is not a diminishment of Canada. This is trying to take advantage of what we're actually good at and do it better and not be ashamed of it.
We are on the world stage so duplicit. This is another controversial thing, but I believe that Canada goes out there and says, come invest with us. You know, we go to Davos, we go to these other world conferences, mining conferences. We say, come invest, invest, invest. But we're not taking care of our own house, right? So we talk about how great we are on an international stage. And then we come back and we're kind of like, ooh, we're a bit embarrassed and we're not that great. And by the way, it's really hard to do business here. So there's like a little bit of a misalignment. I'm a proud Canadian. I want to be able to go to international places and say, Canada's amazing. And by the way, like, we can get your mine permitted in 3 years. Come to our country. Like, we are in real time, we are seeing all those numbers dropping, right? We are seeing mineral exploration, mining drop off, investment drop off. We're seeing, you know, investments in other, like, things are dropping.
At a practical level, like, okay, we've been talking critical minerals for a couple of years now, right? Critical minerals been a couple of years. Tell me the mines that have opened across Canada. How many? You know, Feds, critical minerals, province, critical minerals, you know, everybody's critical minerals. Like, I bet you could count them on one hand if there even is that many. Like, it's crap. It's bullshit. Right? Like, stop it. Right?
So, okay. So if I am a business then in British Columbia and I am operating in the existing public policy environment and I am trying to navigate, okay, February 1st, March 1st, Trump this, Trump that, what is the sentiment and what is the headspace that I should be in, and what are the things that I should be thinking about and doing to actually navigate this challenge? I'm not posting about this and that. Am I taking trips to Washington? Am I, lobbying the provincial government? Am I doing something from a corporate perspective? Like, what strategically am I doing if I'm going to actually be anticipating this kind of risk?
Because we are a primary natural resource economy, which your slides have shown, I think the focus is to go talk to our Asian partners, the Japanese and the Koreans in particular. The Japanese love this country. They want to invest in it. They do see us as a secure partner when we can actually get things built. They've invested over the years. They've been investing in this country in our mineral wealth since post-war, like for 80 years, whatever it is. So I would, it's harder for smaller smaller manufacturers and smaller businesses to see this big thing. But again, I'm harping about LNG Canada. I would talk to the government, provincial government, about please allow these mines in LNG Canada and wood fiber LNG and cedar LNG. Let's accelerate this, please, because those contributions to our GDP in the short term will get us through this. There is enough there. There is enough there. So I know, like, that's not an answer for a small business, manufacturer out in Surrey. That's not a very good answer for them, because what is their role in that?
Mm-hmm.
But
But
it
Byng,
is the answer.
I do think you've touched on something though. Like, why are we not organizing trade missions like right now? Like, why are you not saying,
We
okay,
closed all the trade offices.
hey, yeah, well, I'll touch on that in a second. But like, hey, manufacturers in the Fraser Valley, hey, mining companies, hey, oil and gas. Like, we're putting together these missions. We're going to Australia. We're going to Taiwan. We're going to China. We're going to Japan. We're going to these different places. We're finding buyers for you, for your products. How can we help you? Do we need to cut your taxes by X percentage for this year? Like, for you guys to make that change. Obviously, oil and gas is different because of pipelines.
And those trade missions, because I've been on a trade mission or two in my day, those trade missions got to be self-incentivized, right? None of this, like, government's going to put it together and you get a grant or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
that's going to be my next question.
I'm paying for my own ticket. I'm not making the taxpayer care for this.
Yeah, like having skin in the game for that and not waiting for government to lead with it. I don't want to like advise, because I know I've worked in government before, and I know that when there's not organization of these efforts, that can also get a little bit chaotic as well. But like, it is about relationships, and so it's like building the relationships with the people. So say I'm a manufacturer in the Fraser Valley, like you just mentioned, Byng, and I know that I have some relationships in Asia, in Europe, whatever. I am strengthening those relationships to the point where like you're almost like creating the demand, because if Canada and its policymakers are hearing it within BC, at the federal government, and then also from our partners, that starts to create critical mass of like, okay, we are actually leaving a tangible and real economic opportunity on the table if we don't do something about this.
Yeah. So I have another, I just popped into my head, which is dangerous. And didn't even hurt. Okay. To hell with government. Yeah, we want your trade offices because we need somebody to tell us what the phone number and the email the guy is that I need to connect with. But you know what? Why doesn't CAP do a trade mission? Why doesn't the Business Council of Canada do a trade mission? Like, Paulie Heffer gave all these guys crap for like not being vigorous and standing up for themselves. Do we need government to carry us in these things? Like,
no,
where's the vigor?
Don't. We really don't. And these associations, I think,
Mineral Exploration Association, which we have a great relationship with, I'm going to go tell the president tomorrow. I was like, maybe we should lead the trade mission. You lead it. Like, let's stop being. It's back to the whole grant thing we were railing about before. Like, stop waiting for somebody to do something for you.
Yeah. And you know what? Americans, that's how they are. Like, do you think that, and I'm using extreme examples to hyperbolize here, but do you think Elon Musk will only talk to his partners in XYZ if somebody at state allows him to? Do you think that Meta, or Amazon or any of these other companies are like waiting for the government to tell them that it's okay? I'm not advocating doing anything illegal or untoward or foreign influence. I'm not advocating any of that, but
but why can't you lead it?
Yeah,
who
exactly.
are some of the biggest companies in Canada? The banks. Well, You know what? I bank with 3 of them for different reasons. Like, Scotia Royal, maybe you should lead a bloody trade mission. You want all our mortgages, and you're worried about whether we're going to be able to borrow. And like, why don't you guys do it? Like,
and when you
step up.
When you have the government organize these trade missions as well, and I know, Byng, you've been a part of some, they're very prescriptive. I think that creativity with trade missions can go so much further than a government organized trade mission as well. When you think about the investment into BC from some of these other countries, we already have great contacts. Like, there are people in British Columbia, arguably with better contacts than the government has into some of these other countries that can lean on them. Our
connections to India and our connections to China in this city alone are world class. There's guys doing deals in India and China and Korea or whatever out of this town who probably have higher connection with higher people in government in those countries and more important business people in those countries than government could ever hope to mirror. So yeah, here's a generation of a new idea. See, we're not just crying and complaining here. We actually have some good ideas.
Yeah, call Sedgwick. We'll help you organize your trade mission.
Yeah, literally. Call Sedgwick for a trade mission. But the deal is that Allie or Byng have to be able to come on one of them. We should do like a whole like blogging series.
Yeah, Byng speaks Spanish, so he's a great asset on any South American trade mission that you might be considering.
Yeah.
But it's true, and we need to also, and I think on that point, we need to actually say yes to the people that are coming in our country and want to invest here. like it's a little embarrassing what we've done over the past couple of years as far as having, the Chancellor of Germany and other folks come into our country and us say things like, oh, like we need to be at the federal level a little more knowledgeable of like what's going on. Like I heard Minister Lee the other day say, well, we're just going to stop Line 5. Like Line 5 literally supplies Ontario. Like we need to be a little bit more, like understanding of where we are. The Heinz ketchup thing, another great example. Like I'm pretty sure Heinz ketchup is actually made like in Trudeau's riding. It's manufactured.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like we need to just understand, just take it a minute, just do some inventory, and then plan from there.
Well,
and be serious
back to that gas thing when the Germans came and they said, well, and the Prime Minister said there's not a business case for that. Why was the Prime Minister even responding to that question? It's not his, there should have been a company saying, yeah, we can do that.
Well, that goes back to what we were saying is like when government is so, and again, I'm not advocating like for like a state that's like totally like government only provides clean air and defense. Like I do think that there is a role for the state in Canada. Like I'm not trying to say that.
I want 700,000 British Columbians to have a freaking doctor. That drives me crazy in a modern first world industrial state that I have employees who don't have a doctor.
Yeah,
that's
I don't have a family doctor. I mean, like it's
me neither.
That is insane.
None of us have family doctors, but are we like we are not a free economy in Canada? I think that's kind of the point, right? That's the
point. So that allows government to say those things and for them to have weight because there is such an involvement that there may or may not be in other jurisdictions where we do, within certain environmental and other regulatory parameters, allow business to decide what they're doing and support them along the way within certain guardrails that are needed. I'm for regulation. I am for laws, environment, all of these things. I don't think these should not exist, but like, that's not a decision that government should be weighing in on. The government should be like, what do you need and how can we
If we can't figure out how to do these things in the most environmentally and labor friendly, like worker friendly ways, like nobody can. If we can't do it, nobody can, right?
Yeah, I think the message of this entire conversation is just Canada, like BC, we have to get out of our own way and we have to stop focusing on this tactic. We're going to have a 4-year pneumonia with Trump. Like it's coming. We're seeing it happening and we need to diversify and really figure out how we're going to diversify ourselves, not only for the next 4 years, but for the rest of our country's life.
Well, governments run around and talk about shovel-ready projects. We've got them and let's put the shovel in the ground. Enough.
I agree. Let's put the shovel in the ground. Let's not bury our economy. Let's build it. Let's grow it.
There's lots of things you can do with a shovel. Yeah? You can build a project or you can bury yourself. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I recognize that we're at time, you guys, for this discussion, which is like totally flown by. I want to give you both the opportunity to. I have honestly learned so much from this, and I think like I know we've had people that are watching, that are commenting, that are also learning a lot from this discussion. I want to give you both the opportunity for any just closing thoughts. I'll go first, and then I'll throw it over to you guys. I think my closing thought, we've been doing a ton of these chats informally with people who really know the US-Canada space in different sectors, all of these things. My key takeaway, I think, for businesses and for people who are worried about what's going on is keep calm and carry on. One foot in front of the other. Look at what you can make progress on and what opportunities there are versus the challenges, and don't bide your time. Think of this as a new paradigm and an opportunity to shift and think of the upside of that. If not just for your mental health, but for your business as well, because we are, as Allie said, we are in for the next 4 years. So let's try to do what we can with it. So Byng or Allie, I don't know who wants to go next, but that'd be my final thought.
Byng?
Okay, I'll go. I'm in violent agreement, but the essence of strategy is it must be your strategy, and you must choose the battlefield on which you want to have a conflict. Our response to Trump is highly reactive and a response. We do not have our own strategy. This is simply a reaction. And we've spoken vigorously today about, we need to have a bigger and better plan. There are some short-term things we can do that immediately add to our GDP. And I talked about some of those big projects. But we need a bigger and better strategy, because this might not just be Trump. If this is a successful strategy politically for Trump, these tariffs, we could see the Democrats have historically been the ones against trade. So we could easily see this something is ongoing or a repeat of this. So the simple we have to get beyond reacting. We have to have a real strategy, and it can be a vigorous. I mean, I've already used that word. It can be a bold Canadian strategy that's prideful, protects what makes us unique as Canadians, and looks at the bigger world and embraces our other friends. There is a strategy to be done here, and I'm so sad that our leadership has just gotten reactive and sort of appealing to our lowest common denominator of anti-Americanism. That is not a solution. It's time for us to think bigger and longer term.
Mm-hmm. Allie?
I want goals. I want goals, and I want to hit those goals. I want our government to, in that
Allie wants KPIs.
I want KPIs, and I want to be able to
20 lines in
the morning
months.
And see what have been hit. I want that transparency. I mean, we're transparent with our business and what we're able to do on a daily basis. And I think that needs to happen at the government level. If we're really serious about this, we need goals. I want some concrete goals for BC, for Canada, for other provinces. That's what I'm looking for.
Goals, strategy, positivity. I mean, who wouldn't hire you guys to help? Where can people find you? Thank you guys so much for this discussion. I feel like if it were kosher to be drinking wine at 2 p.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Pacific, then I would suggest we just
always kosher to be drinking wine here at Sedgwick Strategies.
On video, on live stream.
Wine is a natural resource.
Yeah.
Exactly. But where can people have heard you discuss the competencies and the way that you guys think about problem solving creatively. I have nothing but great things to say about you guys and what you're doing. Where can people reach out to you or find you if they want to chat with Sedgwick on how to actually navigate this next period?
Well, if you want to hear us rant some more, we do have a podcast of our own called Primary Risk, and we do get an explicit rating often because we have wine while we are on that podcast. So you can definitely follow us, Primary Risk. It's available on Apple. It's available on Spotify and on YouTube. Sedgwickstrategies.ca is the name of our website. You can probably find Byng at a bar at every major business event in the Lower Mainland and across BC. And of course, you can reach out to either of us on LinkedIn.
Love it. Well, thank you guys so much. I am so glad we had this discussion. Let's make sure that we do it more often. And yeah, can't wait to see where the next few months go. So blessings on your February 1st tariff day.
And thanks for the opportunity, Melissa. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.